Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor. And today it's time already to do my December wrap up and pretty much wrap up the year, my December 2021 wrap up. What did I read this month? What am I going to read in January? Oh, the excitement! Nothing but thrills here at my channel. So, let's talk about the books that I read this month. I read a few of them this time. Not as many as CriminOlly. Basically, what CriminOlly could read in 4 days takes me a month. That's pretty much how it works. I figured it out mathematically. So, the first book I read in December is this book. Stephen King's The Dead Zone, which I liked an awful lot. I gave a review of this. I thought this was a really great book. I thought it closed out Stephen King's 1970s work wonderfully. Really good book. Gave a review on it, but I forgot something very important in that review, I believe. And that's to get little Stephen King's opinion. I didn't pull out little Stephen King when I did my Stephen King review of The Dead Zone. Sorry, little Stephen King. That was a terrible omission on my part. But you know what, little buddy? This was a really good book. I really got not too much to complain about in this book, like I usually do. Okay, you had a crazy mom in it again. Actually, you had a couple crazy moms. You loved crazy moms. But this book was so good, I'm not going to complain, little guy. Good job. Look forward to seeing what you come up with for the 1980s. But yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. Stephen King's The Dead Zone. I am reading every book by Stephen King. And this year, I'm going to start tackling the books from the 1980s. So that should be exciting. Now, I followed that up with a Kindle book, actually, which was Mac Bolan, War Against the Mafia, which was a classic of literature by Don Pendleton. One of the finest books you'll ever read. Mac Bolan, Vietnam veteran who killed a whole bunch of folks over there, has come back here to America to kill a bunch of people in the Mafia. And he does a really good job killing people. He's excellent at it. He killed a whole lot of people, caused a lot of destruction, which is pretty much what you wanted from this book. I did give a review on this one too, actually. But it was fun. It was a fun book. I got a bunch of these Mac Bolan books lurking on my Kindle. So yeah, the second Mac Bolan book will make probably a surprise appearance. He can make a surprise appearance at any time, this guy. He's sneaky, Mac Bolan. He runs around in his little black pajamas and shoots people. You don't see him coming. So you might see another Mac Bolan book just pop up out of nowhere. It could happen. So that was Mac Bolan, War Against the Mafia, which was a lot of fun. I couldn't say it's good, but it's a lot of fun. That's for sure. The next book I read is really, really good. It was a really, really good book. This is my copy. This is No Blade of Grass. The actual title is Death of Grass. This was changed for the unforgettable science fiction classic film, which I haven't watched. I've gotten mixed reviews on that book. on the movie version of this book. The book was excellent, I can tell you that right off. John Christopher's No Blade of Grass, which tells the story, which takes place in the 1950s. There is a terrible virus that wipes out every form of grass, which includes wheat and other things that human beings eat. And of course, that causes a terrible famine. And nothing will make civilization fall like a worldwide famine. And it's interesting just how quickly things just start to fall apart in this book. It's a really good book. I am going to review this probably this week or next week. Next week, I'll review this book. What day is this coming out? Let's see. Thursday, Friday. Yeah. Either this week or next week, whatever week it is, I'll review this book because it was so good. I mean, I'm surprised I haven't read it. It should be considered a classic of science fiction, in my opinion, if it's not already. So yeah, Death of Grass, or in this case, No Blade of Grass. Excellent book. Really, really liked it. That was the best of the month, I think, right there. The next book I read was my beat-up old copy of The Hobbit. I've got an extra fancy version of The Hobbit over here, which is probably, the fanciest way to read this book. But I read it in my beloved beat-up paperback copy from the 80s. I'm pretty sure this came out in the 80s, this one. David Wiley is doing a read-along. He did a read-along of The Hobbit, and he's going to be doing a read-along of The Lord of the Rings. So I haven't read this in 20 years. And this is one of those books that I read over and over again when I was a little kid. And the last time I read it, I only read it maybe once, maybe twice as an adult. And the last time I read it was probably when I was 29 or 30. I can't remember which, but it was over 20 years ago. And so I'm surprised how much, I didn't really forget anything in it, but as I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. And I really saw things from a different viewpoint, that's for sure. I looked at this book in a different way now, as a doddering old man, than I did when I was a young 29 or 30-year-old person. Now that I am knocking at death's door, it all seems different. So yeah, The Hobbit, excellent book. It's great. What do you say? What do you say about this book other than it's fantastic? So much better than the movies. Why'd they make 3 movies off of this? This is just not a big book. 3 movies? Come on, that's excessive. What were they thinking? Cash, I guess. But this book, it's really good. And I love the cover, what you can see of it. It's a little beat up. Excellent. The Hobbit. I had a great time with it. And I'm really looking forward to reading The Lord of the Rings again and seeing what I think of that. Okay, the book I read after that was this one, The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan. And it's about just that. It's about the last werewolf, the last and most melodramatic werewolf you'll encounter. I like this one. This was a good book. It's not a great book. It's not great, but it is good. What it really is it's pulpy fun. It's pulpy horror fun, but it has some literary pretensions, which I don't think it reaches, which is fine. It doesn't have to. It's a fun werewolf book. I am going to review this book because I do have thoughts on it. This is the first of a trilogy. I am going to have to wait about another 90 books almost before I get to it. But before I get to the rest of the books. But this was excellent. It's an excellent start to the trilogy. It was fun for what it was. Our poor, doomed, sexually obsessed last werewolf by Glenn Duncan. It's a fun book. I do recommend this book. I have some caveats. There are some things not so great about this book too, but there are a couple scenes of horror in this book which are just brilliant. His first transformation and what ensues from his first transformation into a werewolf is unmatched. It's fantastic in a gory, awful, horrible way. So yeah, that's probably worth this book right there. Now the last book I read for this month, another classic of literature, Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze. This was the first Doc Savage adventure, which I had never read. I'd never read his first adventure. And he is already the well-trained man of action, Doc Savage. So he's already pretty much a physical marvel, able to do just about everything. In fact, oddly, as this series went on, and you'll notice this if you kind of skip around in the books, which I did, he becomes a little bit more human as time goes on. And by the time the World War II stuff happens, those stories are much more grounded in a kind of reality. This is just pure fantasy that takes place in the 1930s, but it's really fantasy stuff. Whereas the 1940s stuff seems like it kind of exists in a world at least similar to our own. And Doc Savage is a much more human character. All of the characters in the books seem to be a little bit more flawed. Not quite so superhuman. Still superhuman, of course, but not quite so much. It's interesting. But in this first one, yeah, Doc Savage can pretty much do anything. Doc Savage. It's a lot of fun. It's a great pulp adventure. Highly recommend it. CriminOlly recently read this in like an hour. It took me a couple days. Yeah, and oh, I did read a comic book. Where did I put that? Here it is. It's Thor. This is the Thor Epic Collection Ulick Unchained, which is going to be my next Epic Comic Book Wednesday. We are triumphantly returning to the Epic Collections from Marvel Comics. Although this year, on Steve Donoghue and I, we're doing our World's Finest Team Up for Comic Book Day, of course. And this year we are going to be not just doing Marvel Epic Collections. We're going to be doing other things too. Some DC stuff, some other stuff. But a lot of Epic Collections because, frankly, I've got a ton of them. And this one was a lot of fun. Now, originally I wasn't counting these in my challenge, in my read 100 books you already own challenge before you buy any new ones. But then I remembered that Justin at This Just In is counting his omnibus, Spider-Man omnibus, as one of the books he's reading. So I'm like, you know what? This is a big comic. I'm going to go ahead and count it. So these big ones I'm going to count. You know, otherwise I'll never get through this challenge. Like ever. So, yeah. I read that. So that leaves me with what I'm going to read in the near future. Surprisingly, what is going to be my first book of 2022? I did that video day before yesterday when I asked my friends to choose, and there were a couple books that were neck and neck. One of them was Wolf's Hall, but Wolf's Hall was defeated by a surprise contender, which was Logans Run. I was actually shocked that Logans Run beat out Wolf's Hall, but it did by a couple votes. So, okay, Logans Run. I'm happy with that because I really want to read this book. I also want to read Wolf's Hall, but I'm putting that back probably off until the end of next month, probably. But this month, I'm starting off with Logans Run by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. I'm looking forward to this. I really enjoyed the movie a lot. My mom thinks the movie's bad. My mom doesn't like the movie. It was a classic, Mom. A classic. Logans Run. I'm going to read the book. I'm excited to read that. After that, it's time to start with Stephen King in the 1980s with Firestarter. This I remember as being okay. We'll see if I think it's okay still, or whether I think it's good, or whether I think it's bad. We'll see. It could be any one of those things. It's a Stephen King book. So I'm going to continue with my Read Every Book by Stephen King challenge and read Firestarter. That'll be exciting. Then this coming month, I've got to at least start this book, and I'll probably start and finish this book, which is, of course, The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm going along with David Wiley's read-along, and they are starting in January to read The Lord of the Rings. I love this copy. You know, it's funny. This has a very different view, a very different look, the characters in The Lord of the Rings on this cover. And I was thinking as I was looking at these that nobody will ever picture the characters like this ever again. because of the movies. We will always picture the characters like they are in the movies. We will never have a different idea of the characters because we saw that movie. But it's fun to see some of these older illustrations of The Lord of the Rings and get a different look or a different view of some of these characters. That was just an aside. But yeah, I'm reading this book, Fellowship of the Ring. Again, it's been over 20 years since I read this book. And I've only read The Lord of the Rings twice before. So, be my third time, but it's been a couple decades. So, yeah, I haven't read these since the movies came out, since I've read these. So, interesting, I think. If I'm remembering right. Yeah, it has to be. Yeah. Because those movies came out, what, in 2003? Something like that, too? I can't remember. Somebody remind me. So, the next book I'm going to read is going to be, or somewhere around there. The order of these things can change. Other books can jump in. You know how it is. But definitely going to get to these. And this one is going to be my first mammoth of the year. You know, it is 2022 is going to be the year of the mammoths. I've got a lot of big books that I'm going to be tackling. This is one of those big books. This is Swan Song by Robert R. McCammon. I've heard a couple different people say good things about this book. I've heard it's kind of like The Stand, but better, or at least more enjoyable. I hesitated a bit because do I really want to go through The Stand again? But this is going to be a lot different, I'm sure. And I've only read one book by this guy, which was The Wolf's Hour, and I loved that book. I think it was really good in a cheesy, fun 80s kind of way, which this kind of looks like that. So yeah, Swan Song, my first mammoth of the year. And of course, I'm going to start this later than the other booktubers, but I am going to start it in February, and that is this one. Probably going to be starting this in February, just because this one is so long. This is The Complete Robot by Asimov, doing all of Asimov's future history books, and they start with the robot short stories. Chronologically, these are the earliest stories in the series. So, The Complete Robot by Isaac Asimov. And I haven't read The Complete Robot. I read iRobot. But there's a lot more in here than are in that book. So it should be fun and exciting. So there you go. Wasn't that an epic wrap-up? Full of excitement and fun? Of course it was. So I don't even remember what my next video is going to be. But I'm sure it'll just be a thrill. It'll be a thrill. It should be my first video of the year, right? This is Christmas Eve. I'm doing this. Christmas Eve. It's New Year's Eve. You know, the holidays. I can't keep track. So yeah, New Year's Eve, I think, is when this is coming out. Right? That's tomorrow. Right. Okay. All right. I'm confused. You guys have a great day.